How wasted years led to my greatest awakening. Chapter 1. The Illusion of Rekindling. There is a specific kind of blindness that comes with long-term commitment. When you have spent nearly a decade building a life with someone, you develop a dangerous capacity to rationalize the red flags. You tell yourself that the cracks in the foundation are just temporary shifts, that every couple goes through dark seasons, and that loyalty means staying through the storm. I was 30 years old, and I had been with my fiance for 8 long years. We had been officially engaged for about 6 months, planning a future that, underneath the surface, was already turning to ash. Our relationship had been under immense strain for a considerable amount of time. We were struggling to connect on every conceivable level, driven apart by a host of heavy, underlying issues. He had long-standing, severe battles with substance dependency and alcohol abuse, demons that had vanished and reappeared throughout our time together. On my end, I was dealing with a severe bout of seasonal affective disorder over the brutal winter months, which left me emotionally drained and retreating into myself. We were 2 isolated islands living under the same roof. Desperate to save what was left of our connection, we decided to book a trip away from our city. It was supposed to be a romantic getaway, a sacred space to escape our routines, communicate openly, and rekindle the love that had initially brought us together in our college days. During the trip, I allowed myself to feel a fragile sense of hope. I genuinely believed we were finally moving in the right direction, steering our shared ship back into calmer waters. But the illusion shattered the moment we returned home. Immediately after we unpacked our bags, the old, destructive patterns returned with a vengeance. 2 nights in a row, on ordinary work nights, he stayed out past 3 o'clock in the morning. He would stumble into our apartment, radiating a chaotic, frantic energy that I knew all too well. My intuition was screaming at me. I had a sickening suspicion that he had broken his solemn promise to me and had returned to his highly destructive, illegal habits. The anxiety was suffocating, and I knew I couldn't live in the dark any longer. Driven by a desperate need for absolute truth, I did something I am not proud of. While he was asleep, I opened his laptop. Because his desktop messages were synchronized with his phone, his entire private life was laid bare before my eyes. My initial suspicions were instantly validated. There were explicit exchanges with individuals facilitating his illicit habits, alongside messages sent to his close friends containing photographic proof of his self-destructive behavior. It was heartbreaking, but it was nothing compared to what I uncovered next. Chapter 2. The Name in the Ledger. As I scrolled through his message history, my eyes caught a thread of texts under a male friend's name. Let's call him Greg. But the content of these messages didn't match a casual friendship between 2 men. The thread was littered with heart emojis, declarations of longing, and deep emotional vulnerability. I kept scrolling, my hands trembling on the keyboard, as the horrific reality began to take shape. Greg was a cover name. The person on the other end of those texts was a woman. The messages were deeply explicit, uncovering an ongoing, highly organized hidden lifestyle. He wasn't just having a casual lapse in judgment. He was actively professing his deep love for this woman. But the words that cut the deepest weren't his expressions of affection for her. It was the way he spoke about me. He wrote paragraph after paragraph detailing how much he despised me, how trapped he felt in our relationship, and how much he resented my presence in his life. As I sat there in the dim light of the computer screen at 3 o'clock in the morning, I felt entirely disconnected from reality. It felt like a surreal, waking nightmare. I kept waiting for my eyes to snap open, waiting to realize that this was just a horrific trick of my subconscious mind. But the date on the screen was cold and unchanging. As I dug deeper into the financial logs and conversations, the betrayal expanded into something far more sinister. He had been funneling thousands upon thousands of dollars out of his accounts to fund these secret encounters. And she wasn't the only one. Based on the explicit logs, he had been engaging with multiple paid companions over an extended period, and he had consistently neglected to use any form of protection. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. For months, I had been stretching my own finances to the limit, sending him thousands of dollars to help him cover his share of the rent and injecting cash into his business because he claimed his company was experiencing severe cash flow issues. He didn't have a business crisis. He had a moral crisis. I was working myself to the bone, sacrificing my financial security to fund his secret, reckless lifestyle with paid companions. I was completely blindsided, trapped in an empty room with a truth too heavy to carry. I was too deeply embarrassed and ashamed to call my friends or confide in my family. I couldn't bear the thought of reciting the sordid details out loud to anyone who knew me. I turned to an anonymous online community simply to dump the heavy weight out of my brain, desperate to hear if anyone had ever survived a collapse this total. The only saving grace in my mind was that our wedding had been repeatedly postponed due to global events. We had never officially tied the knot. I had wasted 8 years of my youth, but I wasn't legally bound to a ghost. Chapter 3: The Quiet Escape. The anger that settled into my bones wasn't explosive. It was cold, calculated, and sharp. I discovered that he was scheduled to leave town the following week for a supposed business trip, which I now knew was actually a planned rendezvous with one of his secret companions. I made a silent, unshakable decision. I wasn't going to engage in a dramatic, screaming confrontation. I wasn't going to give him the opportunity to lie, gaslight me, or spin another web of manipulation. I was going to disappear from his life entirely. I spent the next few days playing the part of the dutiful, oblivious fiancé. It was the hardest performance of my life. Looking into the eyes of a man I realized I hated to my very core, while maintaining a calm exterior. The moment his car pulled out of the driveway to head to the airport, my operation began. I had already contacted a professional moving company. Within a matter of hours, every single piece of my furniture, my clothes, my books, and my life was packed into boxes and loaded into a secure storage facility. I contacted our landlord independently, informing them explicitly that we would not be renewing our lease, which fortunately had only 2 months remaining. I didn't want to stay in our city to watch the fallout. I packed a single suitcase, grabbed my dog, and booked an immediate one-way flight to California, where I had family and access to a quiet beach. I needed a space where I could process the sheer magnitude of the trauma in absolute peace, a place where I could ugly cry without anyone watching. However, on the day he was scheduled to fly back to our empty apartment, my conscience created a dilemma. Despite the profound hatred I felt for his choices, I didn't actually want him to die. I knew that when he walked into that abandoned space and realized his double life had been exposed, his fragile, substance-fueled mental state could completely fracture. He was a volatile wildcard on a direct path to self-destruction. I made the decision to contact his parents. His father actually owned the business my fiancée managed, and I knew that a significant portion of the money spent on his secret lifestyle had been systematically taken from company accounts. I sat down and laid out the entire, unvarnished truth to his mother and father. I informed them of his extensive substance abuse, his financial infidelity, and his secret lifestyle. I begged them to meet him at the apartment, because I genuinely feared he would do something drastic to himself once he realized the magnitude of what he had lost. With that final duty fulfilled, I cut the cord. Chapter 4: The Pull of Codependency. I spent 2 beautiful, painful months in California, staying with my sister, listening to the crashing waves, and trying to patch my shattered identity back together. But an 8-year bond does not dissolve overnight. By the middle of the summer, the comfort of living out of a suitcase had worn off, and I made the decision to return to my home city to carve out a completely new, independent space for myself. It was during this period of transition that I fell into a classic dangerous trap: the toxic pull of Codependency. Despite my initial intentions to maintain absolute radio silence, we began communicating via text messages again. It was an incredibly unhealthy dynamic. He had entered professional therapy and had supposedly embraced total sobriety, though he adamantly refused to participate in support groups like AA. Because he was doing the superficial work of recovery, he operated under the delusional assumption that we were inevitably going to reconcile. He viewed his sobriety not as a personal necessity, but as a currency to buy his way back into my life. I was firm and unshakable in my boundary. I told him repeatedly that a romantic reunion was completely out of the question, though, in my profound naivety, I thought we could eventually salvage a platonic friendship. It was a laughable expectation. Eventually, the fragile peace imploded. He became increasingly angry and resentful that his superficial lifestyle changes weren't magically forcing me back into his arms. The mask began to slip, and he resorted to classic narcissistic manipulation, actively blaming me for his decisions, suggesting that my emotional distance during the winter had driven him into the arms of paid companions. He began drinking heavily again, discarding the illusion of his recovery. Then came the definitive, traumatic final straw. One evening in late autumn, my phone lit up with a series of frantic, terrifying text messages from him. He stated explicitly that he had consumed an entire bottle of high-proof alcohol, alongside a massive, lethal quantity of prescription sedative medications. His final words to me were a chilling farewell, telling me he would see me in the next life. My heart dropped into my stomach. It was a calculated, horrific act of emotional terrorism, designed to bind me to him through guilt and terror. I immediately coordinated with emergency services and his family. They reached his location just in time. He was rushed to the emergency room, his stomach was pumped, and he physically survived the ordeal. But as I sat in the aftermath of that horrific night, something inside me permanently snapped. The codependent fog completely cleared. I realized that his life was not my responsibility, and I refused to be held hostage by his self-destruction. The very moment the medical crisis was stabilized, I opened my phone and permanently blocked his number across every single platform. That dark saga finally ended in November of 2021. Chapter 5, The Metamorphosis. Flash forward over 2 years later. It has been nearly 3 full years since that fateful St. Patrick's Day when my old life collapsed, and I am standing in a reality that is completely unrecognizable. If you had told the broken, anxious 30-year-old version of me who was weeping in a parking lot that this would be her future, she would have never believed you. The transformation has been so profound that my own family members are still in a state of shock when they look at me. I hadn't realized the sheer, exhausting magnitude of the negative energy I was absorbing every single day in that toxic relationship. I had been carrying the weight of his addictions, his moods, and his secrets on my shoulders for 8 years. Before the breakup, I was a deeply pessimistic, cynical, glass-half-empty person to my very core. I thought life was just a series of disappointments to be managed. Today, I am an easygoing, genuinely happy, glass-half-full woman. I reclaim my joy every single morning. I even shed 40 pounds of physical weight, a reflection of shedding the immense, chronic stress that had kept my body in a constant state of fight or flight for a decade. To every single woman out there who is paralyzed by the terrifying fear of starting over in her 30s, let me tell you from the bottom of my heart, do not despair. Your 30s are not the end of your story. They are the prime of your autonomy. About 6 months after the split, once the initial emotional dust had settled, I decided to slowly put myself back out there. I had never experienced the world of modern digital matchmaking apps, as I had been tied to my ex-partner since our early university days. I certainly wasn't fully healed, and I wasn't actively looking for a marriage proposal. I just wanted to remember what it felt like to be treated with basic human decency. I ended up downloading Bumble and connecting with a man who would completely redefine my understanding of partnership. Neither of us was looking for an intense, serious commitment initially. He was under the impression that an impending corporate transfer was going to force him to relocate across the country, and I was still carrying the residual baggage of a massive relational collapse. Because of our circumstances, we took things incredibly slowly, allowing a deep, respectful friendship to form the foundation. Chapter 6. The clean air of true love. The corporate relocation eventually fell through, and by February of 2022, we officially made our relationship exclusive. We have been together for 2 full years now, and he is, without a doubt, the most perfect match I could have ever asked for. My ex and I were oil and water. He was a chaotic, volatile wild card, perpetually grumpy, and at his core, a deeply unkind and inconsiderate human being. I look back now with a profound sense of healthy embarrassment, wondering why on earth I allowed myself to tolerate that level of disrespect for so many years. My current partner is the absolute antithesis of that chaos. He possesses a calm, steady, and incredibly soothing presence. He is quite literally the kindest, most thoughtful, and most consistently respectful person I have ever encountered in my life. In the 2 solid years we have been building our life together, we have not had a single screaming match or toxic fight. When disagreements arise, they are handled with immense respect, active listening, and a genuine desire to understand the other person's perspective. Our relationship is rooted in a fundamental mutual respect, the exact quality that my entire 20s lacked. As for my ex, the grapevine occasionally carries news of him. From what I understand through mutual acquaintances, he is surviving, though his core patterns haven't fundamentally changed. We maintain absolute, unshakable radio silence, but I genuinely harbor no active malice toward him anymore. I sincerely wish him the best on his journey toward healing. When I look back on that horrific night 3 years ago when I opened that laptop, I no longer feel an ounce of pain. In hindsight, discovering that betrayal was the single greatest blessing that ever happened to me. It was the universe violently ripping me out of a burning building before the roof collapsed. Sometimes I experience a brief wave of anxiety when I contemplate the alternative timeline, the version of me who never looked at those messages, who ignored her intuition, who walked down the aisle and married a shadow. I am not a different person at my biological core. I am simply the healthy, liberated version of myself who finally chose to walk out of the dark and live in the clean, beautiful air of the truth. It's absolutely terrifying to realize how someone can look you in the eye for 8 years while funding a completely secret, destructive double life with your own hard-earned money. But honestly, the way she managed to pull herself out of that toxic cycle, handle the extreme emotional manipulation, and completely reinvent her life in her 30s is nothing short of inspiring. Sometimes, the worst thing that happens to you is actually the universe forcing you out of a burning building before it's too late. Today, she's thriving in a peaceful relationship, proving that it is never, ever too late to choose yourself and start over from scratch. But I want to know what you guys think about this journey. Do you think she did the right thing by leaving silently without giving him a chance to speak? Or would you have confronted him right then and there? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. I love seeing what you guys think. If you found this story powerful and want to see more deep dives into unbelievable real-life relationship dramas, please make sure to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a video. Thank you so much for watching. I truly appreciate your support, and I'll see you all in the next one. Take care.